All right, you're live. Today is Thursday, February 25th, and this is our fortnightly design and user experience meeting. Tonight it is just, or today, this morning, depending on where you are in the world, it is just myself and Tim. I will introduce myself first. My name is Jen Lampton. I am joining from Oakland, California. There are no animals outside my window, but there are some construction workers building a house down the street from me. So I will apologize in advance for any loud noises, and I will try to mute when I can. But Tim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Tim from Deerwood, Minnesota, otherwise known as St. Paul Tim on GitHub and other places. And Jen saw me peeking out the window to see if there was anything there I could talk about, and there's not. It's a really boring day. It's gotten warmer though up here in the North Woods, so it's above freezing, so that's warm for us, given the late. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. We got a full agenda.
Great. Let's see. So speaking of the agenda, we usually start with a theme initiative update. And I think there was a meeting this week.
Sure. I can talk about that quickly. So we had a meeting on Tuesday. The intent was the initiative has been going on for about now 9 months. And the intent is that we were looking for kind of what the endpoint would be and how we could sort of wrap up this stage, at least this stage of this initiative. And we walked through. I'm not going to go into detail because we did record the meeting, so anybody who's interested can go back and watch what we did. Luke did a summary of kind of what's been accomplished so far, and a number of things have been. I think part of our the issue with that initiative was it started to get sort of wandering goals, so we were never quite sure what the endpoint was. And the outcome of that meeting, I would say, is that Luke feels like that maybe the thing to do is sort of report back, is to sort of bring that initiative to a close with a report on what we've accomplished, what we've learned, sort of recommendations for what work needs to be done, and then regroup. And if we want to form a new initiative, we can. Luke certainly has expressed some interest in moving on and working on other things. So that's where that's at. If you I'll post the link in this agenda, but it's also been posted in Zulip to the recording, or you can just go to our YouTube channel. It's there.
Great. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure if you can hear that or not, Tim. I don't know.
For my voice?
From my computer, it might be. But I don't know. I also don't know if it's happening on the video recording. It might not be. Just figured I'd throw that out there.
Okay. I'm not hearing it, and I'm using headphones, which usually I don't have problems with that, so I don't know.
We'll keep an ear on it. If we get any complaints, we can worry about it.
Okay.
All right. For Backdrop the product, we have a couple of usability issues that we'd like to talk about. One of them is the issue number 2353 to move the clear log messages button to the bottom of the DB log messages page. This is one that we talk about this week only because it needs to be escalated to the project management committee for a decision on what to do next with that issue, if anything. Peter did a great job of summarizing the issue and found some comparable interfaces in Core that we can use as a comparison. And so I think we're probably a good place where that can be written up in the PMC queue now. We just need to actually do it. We don't need to discuss it in this meeting, but it's useful to have it on this agenda as a reminder to do that. The next issue, and one that I would like to briefly mention this week, is this new issue that was reported recently. We got an email through the, I think the contact form on backdropscaness.org, where somebody who uses a screen reader to navigate the website reported that they were unable to move blocks on the Manage Blocks page. And I think this is something that we knew at the very beginning of putting in the layout system, that manage block page was going to be hard to navigate using a screen reader, because we don't have a giant table that you can just slide rows or up and down in, which is what we were replacing. But because it's a visual representation of the page, trying to make that navigatable via keyboard was going to be really hard. So we have a couple of solutions that will make it possible to do what people want to do using screen readers, including adding a weight option and a region option on the block configure form. But we also wanted to see if we could change the manage layouts or manage blocks page to accomplish the ability to move things around. And Doc Wilmot wrote a pull request that does make the interface navigable using your arrow keys, but it's not discoverable. So even though it's possible to use it that way, you would have to know you can use it that way in order to be able to use it. And so we've got the person who contacted us via the contact form has now weighed in on the issue, and they're helping in the issue queue, which is great. We've also looped in Mike Gifford, who is an accessibility expert who's been doing a bunch of work on Drupal, has jumped in and provided links to a bunch of relevant Drupal issues that we can look at and hopefully learn from. And so I just wanted to say a quick thank you to all of the people who have been helping with that issue. There was a huge flurry of movement on it almost immediately after it was opened, with a lot of help from Indigo Zella, Doc Beaumont, and all of the people who have been helping us with feedback too. And so I just have been really impressed with the community's response to that problem, and wanted to say thank you to everybody on that. If anyone is particularly interested in usability focused issues for Backdrop CMS, you're welcome to search our issue queue. Every issue that is usability focused should have square brackets in the title with the letters U and X between them, and that should indicate that that issue is user experience issue. Any issue that is tagged as user experience issue with that pattern in the title can get into any bug fix release if it gets resolved. So those are not waiting for future releases in order to get it. We have a few design focused issues too. One of them is issue number 4113, which is better defaults for page layouts. I don't remember where this one ended. Looks like we have some new feedback. Basically, everybody agreeing that the breadcrumbs are in a weird position.
Yeah, a small development on that is that I started a new theme called Opera that I'm working on, and you had suggested, and you've made a few suggestions on how to solve that I hadn't never tried, and I tried one of them in my new theme and like it. Not quite sure what the implications are for core. We could talk about it for a second. And it was, I think you suggested a couple of different things. The one that I tried was just creating overrides for all of the default layouts in my theme.
Yep.
That just basically make a move to the blocks, the default positions of the blocks. That doesn't affect anything else, and everything else sort of works as expected. You can get around this issue once you turn off the default title block that's in core. And I just basically moved that block on our templates. But a lot of people end up disabling that anyways, because once you create your own title block, then that's no longer active. So again, in my overrides, once you've disabled the default block, you have the same options that you would have had anyways. It's just, it starts out in a different place.
Yep.
And so I think at some point you suggested that as a possibility for Basis, except I don't know that we could do that in Basis because that would not be backward compatible, would it?
So that is my preferred approach for all of the sites that I work on. When I make a custom theme and it needs to have, there's like five blocks that are hard coded into the layout because they're really important. Like you can't not have them. So it's sort of as a fallback position, and that's like messages, tabs, the title, and like local actions, or there's some other things. Maybe they're all included in the maybe I don't know. Maybe there's only 4,
Right.
but there are a couple that are really important because Backdrop wouldn't work if you didn't have them. For most of my custom themes, if those have to go somewhere other than where they are by default in the layouts, then I move them in the themes. And I find that makes a better user experience on the layout side, because I usually end up with a lot of blocks in my layouts. And so not having to worry about where those are and moving stuff around them there, I like. But it does present a problem for existing sites who maybe have already configured their layouts. When you then move something in a region in the template, it is going to affect those sites. Whereas if it was moved in configuration, it would not affect those sites if we didn't override the configuration in the update. So there's backwards compatibility consideration involved, which is, makes it a harder decision. Like, do we want to, and then once you do place a block in configuration, you can't unplace it. You can't like go back to the other one in an update, like, because we don't know whether people have placed another block or not. So it's like whether you're changing for new sites only or existing sites too, and then what do you do later if you change your mind? So I definitely think that for Backdrop 2, we should make all of the changes in the template files where we want them, so that we don't have to worry about the block UI. For Backdrop 1, the question is the placement of these blocks important enough that we need to make all of these overrides in the configuration out of the box or not? And the breadcrumb block was sensible because it's already placed as configuration. To just move it for new installs, there isn't going to be any difference. But adding a title block will disable the default title block position. Adding the breadcrumb or the messages in the tabs and the local tasks is another thing that's more complicated. It's something that most people don't think about, and they just sort of like appear on the page. And then later on, if you're like, oh, I don't like where that is, you have the opportunity to move them. But I'm not sure it's something we need to put on everyone's layout out of the box. So yeah, both solutions are possible. I don't really know which one is better. I don't know which considerations are more important. But yeah, I'm glad you tried the theme one though, the template file override approach, and at least gives you some perspective on how that could work too.
Exactly. And I feel, I mean, it was kind of a breakthrough just because I hadn't done that before. And now having done it, it opens up other, sort of gives me a better understanding of other things I could do that way. But we still have, certainly in Opera that works, but in Core, it's harder. It's backwards compatibility is why I had suggested just changing the config in the install profile. I understand now why you're reluctant to do that, because this is a better long-term solution, but it doesn't address the backward compatibility part. So my thought, again, I have a PR, I think, right, that we've looked at that moves. Basically what it does is it adds a title block, and by adding a title block, we don't use the existing one. I'm not sure how we can, with config, move the breadcrumbs without doing that in config. So, and to me, the default way that Backdrop handles the title is actually out of sync with what I think the new Backdrop way is, right? I mean, the fact that the title is available as a block is like a really cool thing to me, but we're not using it as a block out of the box. And I guess your argument might be that that's what people are used to coming from Drupal, but to me, it's always kind of puzzled me. Like, why, if we have a block, are we not using it right out of the box?
Yeah.
So
my issue isn't so much that it's not coming from Drupal, it's just that it's extra work that shouldn't be necessary. Like, you shouldn't have to think about where your title is. It should just go where it's supposed to go, and it should go where it is on every page. You shouldn't need to place it like per layout. And so if your theme is controlling that, then it's not something you need to worry about. But if you have a specific use case where, like, on one page you needed to go somewhere different, that's a good place for your layout to take that over. So it's not so much that, like, I agree, it's a good feature, and I'm glad we have it in Core. And I was thrilled when Document figured a way to add the blocks with fallback locations. I think it was Document. But it seems like extra work that shouldn't be necessary for every site to have a block placed.
But how is it extra work? Because what we do is we configure it in the install profile for basis. So
No.
when basis, what?
No, the block title isn't configured anywhere.
The current
The page
pull
title.
request, that what it does is it adds the block title to the layout in install, but it just adds it to basis. So I'm pretty sure it just
If it's doing it in configuration, then it has to be a layout setting.
You're right. No,
Yeah.
you're right. It would be a layout setting, so it would affect all themes. So I guess your point is then if you don't use basis, then it still affects you. And
yeah,
I mean, but I kind of feel like it's just there in the layout, whichever layout you use. It's just not where it used to be for new sites. So it doesn't, to me, I don't see that it requires extra work because.
Well, now you've got a block on every layout that you have to move. Whereas before you wouldn't, there's zero work involved there. It just goes where it should go. And now you've got, like, if you want to change it, you've got to change it in 18 places. Whereas before there was zero changes required.
No.
Because the block is not, the title block is not placed as a block in configuration out of the box. It's left to the theme. Yeah. So there's no work involved. If you change a theme or something, it just goes where it's supposed to go.
There's only work if you want to move it, right?
Or if you change your theme, for example. Right now, you're overriding your theme settings with your layout if you have anything in the layout. So if you change the theme, you're not going to see where the theme wants the title to go. You're only going to see your overrides for it.
Okay. Maybe I have to experiment with it. I mean, from my perspective, unless I go try it, and maybe then when I visualize it, I'll see what you're talking about. But for me, it's like it's in a default position. And unless you consciously decide to move it, it's just there for all of your layouts, for all of your... So there is no extra work unless you're going to move it. But if you're going to move it, then there's going to be extra work anyways, no matter how we do it. If you make the choice that you want it somewhere else, then you have to place it in all of your layouts because right now it's in a default position, which can't. Well, I think I see what you're saying. Is that, well, no, but you'd still have to.
So what I'm saying is that, like, by default, if you don't have any configuration for it, the title goes where the theme wants it to go. And so in basis, it'll put it in one place, another theme will put another place, whatever it is. And only when you have one page that requires your title somewhere different do you need to do anything at all. But if you place that title on every single layout for your site, you change your theme, you now have to, like, unplace it for every single layout on your site, or you need to unplace it for every page that's not that one page you wanted overwritten. So it creates this, and part of this is related to the fact that our layouts don't, like, inherit from the default layout in the way you would expect. So if you have to make a change to, like, the header, you have to do on every single layout. Out of the box, there's only, like 3 of them or something, 2 of them. So it's not so much work, but with an actual productions that you end up with, I don't know, 10 of them or something, then there's a lot of work. Every time you place a block somewhere, you have to now do it consistently across 10 layouts. And so every time you add another block, like a title, it's now 10 extra changes that you need to make in order to, make any changes to the title, even if it's just like a heading tag or something, I don't know, a class. But if it's in the theme, there's 0 changes because it's already placed where it's supposed to be.
So I think I'm getting closer to understanding your point. Let me ask one more question, and then we don't need to belabor this. If right now, if you're going to move the title, and you want it to affect all of your layouts, how would you do that? What file are you going to edit?
Are you talking about doing it in configuration, or are you doing it in the theme?
In the theme, if you want to change the position. Yep.
So if I have a custom theme, and my site is using, like, the Moscone flipped layout or something like that, and I want that block title to be moved on that layout, I'll override the core layout and put it into my theme. Now, if I wanted to work on all layouts, I will override all core layouts and put them into my theme. But for most part, my theme will then control where that block is, and I don't have to do anything in configuration. So if I wanted, I don't know. So it's really about, like, if you don't want to make the changes to your theme and you want to make them in configuration, there's a user interface for that. But I'm not sure that that is a better way to solve it, because it also clutters the user interface for anything else people are trying to do there. So I don't know. I mean, this also might be a thing that, you know, maybe we just need to have more people weigh in on, because I don't know. I don't usually give my editors access to the layout UI. So a lot of this is around like my preference for managing layouts. And I have a lot of layouts and they get really complicated. So I don't want to have like title configurations on there. But other people might be like, this is a fantastic tool and we need to have it everywhere. But yeah, for me, it's a lot of extra work to manage it in the UI than it is to manage it in code.
So I have to go see like what you mean by that, because I have an idea, but I'm still not convinced that it is any extra work.
Yeah.
But we don't need to debate that any further.
And it might not be for other people. So.
Okay. Well, let's move on. But yeah, I don't know. Well, personally, to me, as I mentioned to you before, I was the one who was sort of advocating for this issue for a while, and I have de-emphasized it because my new approach is just using contrib themes and not trying to solve this in core. So I mean, I think this is totally solvable in 2x, and we should. But I don't know how to solve it before that. So
yeah, I do think that the current pull request for breadcrumbs though could go in at any time, because breadcrumbs are already placed as blocks. We're not changing the amount of effort involved in anything. We're just moving the breadcrumb block from one region to another.
But I don't think we can move them to where we want them unless we mess with the title. At least until you show me how. That's the reason I moved the title. The only reason I moved the title in that pull request, I was fine with the title where it was, but I didn't know how to get the breadcrumbs where I wanted them unless I moved the title.
Okay. I'll take another look at it with that in mind.
Sure. Okay. I might too. Maybe I'm missing something. Okay, that went longer than it should have been.
All right, let's see. So we also have this ongoing issue of how do we change CSS safely within the 1.x milestone. And we have a couple of different approaches. The most recent one is currently called Supplemental Css Selectors, and the issue number is 4782. And this issue is around adding body classes. So when we add a new feature or we want to change CSS late in the release cycle, we could add a body class for that release, and it could be limited to a minor release, or it could be limited to one minor release per year, whatever kind of restrictions we want to put on it. And then all of our CSS changes would go with that body class, be prefixed with it. We'll put a little to-do in there that's like @2.x remove prefix or whatever it is. And then only websites that are installed on that date or after will add that body class. And then the CSS will only affect those sites. And if you are running an existing site and you want that change, you can add that body class in your theme and it'll inherit all of the core CSS. So there is a way to hack it if you want to include it that I think is easier than trying to include supplemental style sheets, but that would have been possible too, just not quite as easy. I think the biggest argument against supplemental style sheets is when you're styling one element, you don't have to look in like 5 different places to find the selectors for it, which makes it messy to maintain. This would allow you to keep all of the selectors in the same file, in the same part of the same file, and we'll just have a different body class prefixing the element you're styling. So I think it solves that issue. The current debate is around, I think, what the body class should be. Like, should it be based on date? Should it be based on version number? What should it look like? And then how often should we add them?
Yeah, I mean, those are some things up for discussion, and I'm fine with this proposal. I was not sure why it was better than supplemental. I think you've helped. Just what you said today, gives me a little better understanding of why it's better. But I don't know that we've gotten enough like people in support of it yet for me to feel comfortable that. that
I
it's
think
going to
it
move
might be
forward.
useful at this point to file an initial pull request that uses them, because talking about it in concept is not as good for most people as looking at it in reality. So that might be something good to try. I think we have a couple of good issues that are slated for that. The one with the space around the hero block might be a good one, which would be a fairly simple example that we could do specifically for basis. Another advantage for this is that this would work for any style sheet in core, whereas supplemental style sheets, we were trying to figure out whether we were only going to do it for basis or whether we were going to allow like modules to do it. This could work, code base wide, which is also without 100 extra supplemental style sheets. We would only need whatever number we have now could stay the same.
So the point I think you're just making, which hadn't occurred to me, is that this is really a policy decision. There's not a code change just for this issue. Really, what we would do is we would take another issue and solve it with this solution, and then that's where the debate might happen. Okay.
And then I think if we get agreement on the policy, we would publicize it, maybe even send it to PMC for approval, and say, hey, we're going to do this crazy thing. What do you guys think? And if we can do something that we can prove doesn't break backwards compatibility and allows us to add incremental design and style improvements, I think that would be a no-brainer. But publicizing how we do that for the future would be good too. So if anyone's working on a pull request that requires a CSS change, they know how to introduce it safely.
So in a process question, the body class one, for example, you said, so if we wrote a pull request with this solution in it for that issue, the debate, if there is any, would become about that solution, not about that particular problem.
Yeah.
So how should we handle that? Just let it go in that. So then debate this idea in that other issue, or try to steer the discussion back. Because it could take that issue off in a tangent.
I think what I would do is I would probably file a pull request for this issue that solves the other problem and label it like experimental do not merge or something, so that we can keep all of the conversation here. And if people like it, then we can rename the branch and apply it to the other issue and let it go over there. But yeah, it is a process question. I'm like, maybe we just solve it over there. But that would definitely get more eyes on it for a second pass. So
right. But I think your last idea makes sense.
Okay.
So about just filing an issue, but using the current discussion and attaching it to that for now.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Hey, Gregory.
Hello.
Having a small intimate meeting today.
No worries.
But we were working through the agenda. We just got past all the fun stuff though. So.
No worries. Sorry.
But you're in time for the next meeting.
That could also raise an interesting point with our process, where if we end up having supplemental CSS selectors that add only once a year, just had this thought, we could create like 2 milestones ahead. So we always have a year worth of minor release milestones. And then when we get an issue that has a solution, that can just be slotted for like next May or whenever that release is that has the.
Right. I think I added that idea just in the last week, which is that we only do them once a year or something, because I think a big objection is going to be the potential for a lot of selectors.
Yeah.
The other, I don't know if you saw my other solution, and this might be a really bad idea, but maybe we can just decide that real quickly and head off debate, which is that we just have one that we just insert one per site when on install, but then have the CSS, so have multiple. I have a code example, which will be easier than me trying to describe it in the issue. I think this would also work, and it actually adds more like characters to core, my idea, but the characters are in the CSS files instead of in the markup. So it leaves prettier markup, but means more changes. Are you looking at it?
No, is this, so just let me say this. So when you install your site, it would add
Yeah,
a selector that would mark the point at which it was installed. And then you would
Right.
get everything that came before that, but nothing that became after. Is that what you're thinking?
yes.
Okay.
And that you could do that just by adding each year, adding another criteria for each rule, right? So that, and I have examples again in the issue. So I'm doing a crappy job explaining it, but if you look at the.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But then every time we update,
Yes, that's the other downside.
Yeah,
Is you have to
every
keep
time
updating them.
yeah, I think the amount of work burden that would put on core developers makes it unlikely to be effective because we're going to forget. Yeah, I also am not, I don't particularly care about the prettiness of the HTML markup. I care about the prettiness of the software. There are probably other people in the community who are a lot more concerned about what the markup looks like. So I might not be a good person to ask about that. I'm just like, make it messy and make it easy on developers.
Right.
But
I threw this idea in the mix just for discussion and in hopes that maybe it would stimulate another idea, like somebody that might spring some even better idea. But I mean, I would probably vote right now for the just adding the, having a lot of years or a markup, or a lot of selectors in the markup, or classes, adding classes to the markup. Sorry. Okay.
So the sorry, I haven't visited that that issue in a long time. So is the prominent or the more acceptable solution to be doing sort of like versioned classes?
yeah,
You're discussing whether we do it by version, like by backdrop version, or by year. We do it once a year. Is that okay?
Well, that's one option that's been thrown out. We could, if we're going to do it 3 times a year, we'd want to do versions. But if we were just doing it annually, then we could just have an annual selector.
Well,
and then I think a big objection is going to be the number of classes, and by reducing them by 3, a third could help head that off. If people are comfortable doing a new class every version, then I guess I'm fine with that. I wouldn't argue.
I understand that. I understand that, but on the other hand, we're probably delaying solutions. So,
right now we're permanently delaying them.
Yes,
this would be that would be delaying them less. But if we want to delay them, not delay them at all, then we're willing to accept, we could have 15 or 20 of these selectors, in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And we don't know, right? We don't know that we're going to go to 2x at any point. So if we drag that out, you're going to get a lot of version selectors or version classes.
Yeah. That also assumes that we get a CSS change in every minor version.
Right.
And I know, Greg, you think that as soon as we have this ability, we will use it, which is likely. But I still am thinking that if we say, let's try it for a year and add one every release and see what happens, then we could get 3 that would be like version, 118, 119, 120, 121. And then all of a sudden it'll be like 2022. We could do that if we needed to. It would be nice to have a consistent pattern from the beginning, but we can change our mind later if we need to.
Yeah, we can clean up eventually, like in 2 point whatever. Yeah. Can you remind me, if you remember, what was the argument against having those be features that could be, not features, but settings that could be enabled or disabled on the theme with checkboxes, like being separate files? Or
so if this new approach would be core wide, it wouldn't be limited to a theme. But okay. I could definitely see a contrib module building a user interface that would be like, do you want to include CSS fixes from da 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 da, and let you add them. I'm not sure I'd want to put it in core though, because it would give people a user interface that might allow them to break their site, which I generally don't like, because you don't know if whatever they have built before they added that tool is going to work with it or not, just because the number of opportunities to make things that don't work is vast. They would have an opportunity to uncheck the box and turn it off if everything broke, but I would prefer not to have a does it break my site or not checkbox in core. But I definitely could see that happening in Kinship. And I envision it, if we build something like this, I would envision it happening almost immediately that someone would build that Kinship model.
Because
I also think it's just, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I just don't see a need for it because I think it's a really rare number of people that would want newer style sheets. The style sheets are to fix things for future sites. My assumption is that older sites have already fixed them or learned to live with them, and they're not looking for these fixes. So to me, there might be some people who want to do that, but I think they're going to be very small, and they could fix it just by editing their config file.
Right? Their theme.
So I think, I think that idea was, first of all, we would add a time stub of installation for each site somehow, and then we would not flood the settings page with like a huge amount of checkboxes for new sites. It would be only for the older sites. It's kind of a complicated solution, or it sounds like it, but the benefit would be that, first of all, people that never go to tweak the settings, or that's what we're trying to fix, right? We're trying to, for existing sites, for people that are not confident with CSS, not to break them, is that?
No, we're trying to not touch anything in an existing site should have no change at all. This should be only for like new installs. We want to fix things people didn't know was a problem out of the box. It's going to be new. It's going to be different.
I'm not worried about the new versions. I'm worrying about existing sites. So
this shouldn't affect them at all. There should be no change at all.
Yeah.
Except that their markup will be a little uglier. But they won't know it.
Would it be? No, because they wouldn't get any of the classes. Because if they did that, CSS would work. Existing sites would have no change whatsoever.
You know what? You're probably suddenly I'm very confused. So I'm going to stay out. So how these classes are added at installation, right?
The marker for the classes will be set at installation. So like it'll say, what version did you install at? It'll be like backdrop 119 or what year did you, whatever it is we decide. And then when your page template is being rendered, or your HTML template, it'll say what year were you installed, and then it'll add all of the classes that should come before that, and none of the classes that should come after that.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That makes sense. So it doesn't affect. Well, yeah. Nothing visible will be changed. Yeah.
And if people like say advanced users wanted the fix that we included, and they wanted those classes that come after, they would have a way to say, yes, include those classes, right? Or move the marker somewhere, move the marker to another version.
Yes.
Yeah, they would move the marker. Right. They would move the marker in their settings, right? Or their config. You could go to your config file and change.
Yeah. So the only thing I don't want to,
because there would be a config setting that said when you installed your site, right? And
I would like to encourage people not to change that because we might want that for something else.
I agree, but well,
so if you
Greg is looking for a way, right?
You could do it in your template.php file. You could do it in the template directly.
Okay.
Just add the body class. Or there could be a contrib module that would allow you to use a different tool to set the classes.
Hey, Terry.
Hey, Terry.
Hi.
And we're still wrapping up our last
Justin
meeting.
As well.
But welcome. Yeah. And we probably should wrap this meeting now. I think we were. Did we answer your question, Gregory?
Yes, it's just that I don't want to be steering things, but that I kick the tires afterwards and then I come up with issues. The only issue is that, we can have a separate thing, which is a timestamp, and then the marker can be depending on that. So people can change the marker, but not the installation timestamp. That's a solution to that.
Yeah.
But see how you said then people can move the marker. They will get, if they want to get one fix, they will move the marker and they might get a fix and anything between. So
yeah. Gregory, I just don't. I mean, to me, you're trying to fix a problem that I don't think exists because I don't think people really want to or need to do that. Anybody that's going to do that is going to be. You'd have to be really in tune with.
And we're also talking about people going in and changing their config files at random. And anyone who does that already is asking for a world of pain. So I feel like if you're willing to go in there and fuss with your config files, you accept the risk that like anything could explode at any site. So yeah.
Big fat warnings of, you know, that's this only if you know what you're doing. Yeah, fair enough. All right, cool. Let's wrap this up then.
Okay. All right. I have to turn off the recording, stopping the live stream. Thanks everybody who was watching, and we will